What is up, true believers? It's Mason here with Comics and Crosses, where we discuss the eternal truths behind our modern mythology. And today, I wanted to have a conversation based on a comic book I read from the current series of Daredevil. That is, that's Daredevil issue 2 or 650 if you're going by legacy numbering. So that's this book right here. And Daredevil and an old friend of his, Goldie, have an interesting conversation around God's part in the lives we live. And you could even say that they touch on the oft debated subject in Christianity of predestination. So let's take a minute to just kind of take a look at that and see what ideas we can pull from the sacred text of Marvel Comics. All right, and thanks for tuning in today, guys. I just wanted to take this opportunity to discuss the subject of predestination as discussed by Daredevil where are we at? There, in issue 2 of Daredevil. So, this is an interesting issue where Daredevil, or Matt Murdock, finds out that an old friend of his that he's known since his college days has kind of been pulling some strings behind the scenes. Spoiler warning, perhaps, for this issue if you have not read it yet. This is the current series. I forget which volume it is, but the current volume of Daredevil, which is a continuation of Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil and Chichetto. So why a new volume started, I mean, maybe you could justify it as like a chapter break, but I really wish they would keep the numbers going up as high as possible. But, you know, comic book publishers are trying to get as much money as they can, and number one issues tend to do that. They could draw in new readers, so, you know, I won't slam them too hard for it. Predestination in comics, is that really being discussed? Is that really a thing? Well, you'd be surprised. So here's what happens. Daredevil is kind of getting into a fight, a verbal and physical sort of fight or chase with his old friend Goldie, who's revealing this information about having been involved in some of the actions, some of the major milestones in Daredevil's history, and sort of almost like playing God, almost like influencing events in a sort of outside, controlling the inside sort of way that we would think of as more of like a God's viewpoint of Daredevil's life. And so Daredevil, if you don't know, he's a Christian, he's a devout Catholic, and has faith in God, has faith in the Christian God. So in this exchange, Goldie brings up that they used to spend their nights in college, Daredevil and him, Matt Murdock and him, talking about why, you know, debating if God existed, and if God was good, why would he let bad things happen? You know, why would he not intervene? You know, and if Daredevil's doing all of this work, fighting crime, being a vigilante, why does God kind of allow it to continue? And so here's an interesting response that was a little deeper than I would have expected from Matt Murdock. And he says, God knows the outcome of the play, but I still have to write the lines and live with the consequences on his stage. So God knows the outcome of the play, but I still have to write the lines and live with their consequences on his stage. So this is interesting because I know that there is a strong pull to basically have things be one way or the other. Right now, if you're an American citizen, you know that the country is very politically divided, and everybody believes that either the right is entirely correct and the left is totally wrong, or the left is totally correct and the right is totally wrong. At least those are the only voices you're hearing. People who live in the middle are probably just afraid to say anything. A lot of people are. And my channel is not political, but I'm trying to illustrate a point of being very single-minded on subjects that can sometimes be actually more complex than we give them credit for. So Daredevil here is saying that God already knows the outcome of everything that happens. Now, that sounds like something that Christian folks or Christian theologians might call predestination. And this is something that's often debated in Christian circles, whether it's already predestined who will believe in God, who will go to heaven, and who will not. So therefore, we are all just kind of playing our part in what is already predestined. And then there are those who don't believe that and believe that it absolutely matters whether or not I share with somebody the good news of Jesus Christ, because they may never know, and it's not predetermined who will and who will not. So that is an interesting distinction that really creates a lot of division within Christian circles, because it really changes the way you look at things. I could make an argument that it ultimately doesn't, but that's not what I'm here for at the moment. So so this comic greatly reminds me of that, because they're getting into me versus God. And I don't mean me against God, but if I'm doing this part, which part is God doing? And how does that all fit together? So God knows the outcome, but I still have to write the lines. So Matt Murdock is affirming God's existence and omnipotence, ultimately knowing everything that's going to happen, right? And then, but he's also affirming his own part to play, meaning he is not free and clear. He's not subject to a completely predestined world where he is off the hook for any sort of action. And you would think so. If somebody's going to put on a devil mask, and which is another layer of kind of interestingness to this conversation, is that the devil is the one telling how this works. But so from the devil's perspective, Daredevil, that is, he's saying that God knows all. He knows the outcome. He knows what's going to happen. It's no mystery to God. He's on the outside looking in. And then what he says, I still have to write the lines. So God is all knowing, and I am personally responsible to play my part. So, which I think is an awesome way to look at things. Because oftentimes, you'll hear people say, oh, if God is all knowing, why doesn't he stop this? Why doesn't he do this? If God is so powerful, if God is so knowledgeable, why did he allow this to happen? I can understand why people feel that way. Personally, this is just me, but I often personally find it not to be really an intellectual argument. I get why they're saying that there's kind of a flaw in how that makes sense, but at the same time, everyone I talk to, they feel a certain way about it. It irks me, the idea of a good God, if these bad things are happening. Like, they're trying to say, I don't like that image you're painting, right? And so Matt Murdock, he's put on a costume, he's got out there to do good, to fight evil, and he's taken personal responsibility. God knows the outcome, but I have to write the lines. Him knowing God is playing into his desire to fight evil. So, which is good. There are a lot of characters in comics who are not religious or, don't seem to have any kind of faith background. But it's good to see that Daredevil's, in this case, is motivating him for good. And he can live in a world that is actually more dynamic than the typical world that's being sold right now in social media, in mass media, where things are either this or this. Whereas we find when it comes to issues of faith and spirituality and God being bigger than ourselves, it's not a or, it's a and. So it's not either God is all-knowing and I don't have to do anything, but it is God is all-knowing and I must do my part. Daredevil goes on to say, let's see here, and live with their consequences on his stage. Daredevil has actually what you could call a dualistic worldview, and which is pretty dynamic, because he's saying I'm doing the actions and I'm living with the consequences. But again, he places himself within what's happening, directly related to what needs to happen and needs to be done. And yet he places God outside himself. God is being above him, because ultimately he says this is God's stage. So that's pretty compelling, because I feel as if a lot of times the only depictions you'll get of Christians will be, of someone being hypocritical, somebody being basically just not what they preach. Comics is so great because you can get so much more dynamic characters than you'll typically get in movies or shows. There's a chance for there to be a great deal of depth as these characters continue on and on episodically in a serial fashion. And so here is Daredevil clearly understanding where he lies and where God exists outside of the plane that he has to play in. Does Daredevil believe in predestination? From this little nugget here of what he's saying, here's the funny thing, and there a lot of, I'm sure if there's any scholars out there, theologians, I'm sure you can disagree with me, and that's fine. I'm just sharing with you my perspective, and I don't by any means claim to be a theologian of any great merit, but I am a Bible college dropout. I think he has a very balanced version of it. Yeah, I think that God can predetermine the outcome, just as he says. But I think that he's still interested in the way that we behave, even if God knows the end from the beginning, which he does. He puts a great deal of importance on the way we conduct ourselves in the in-between, in the areas that we are forced to live this out. There's a picture that Jesus paints of servants who are left with their master's money. Basically, say it's the employer who leaves them with some shares of stock, and he goes out, and then these three guys, one of them he gave 5, one of them he gave 2, one of them he gave 1, right? So the guy with 5 turns it into 10. He invests and doubles it down, does great. The guy with 2 turns it into 5, and the last guy with 1, he's scared. He doesn't quite know what to do, and he knows that his boss is a real hard dude. He will get real upset if he's doesn't do the right thing. So he just buries the stock, or he doesn't invest it in anything, thinking better I don't lose it than I do something bad with it. The boss comes back, is super happy with the first 2 guys, and then the last guy is very upset because he did nothing. And he might complain, well, I wasn't born that smart. I'm from the wrong side of the tracks. Well, I'm this, I'm that. Well, I'm kind of... There is a picture that's being painted in the Bible. And I think it's, this is just a couple panels in a comic book. In the 650th issue of this character's ongoing comic story. But it's painting a picture that I see as congruent with the Bible, that there is an expectation put on us humans to make the most of what we have. God knows how it's going to go, but we have a part to play. Interesting to see that kind of conversation come up, and I think right there, I just been talking for 15 minutes about this little moment in comics, because I think it really tells us a lot. I think it's a good depiction of how this thing plays out. It's not that, often in comic books, gods can seem small. Gods can seem one of us, among us, and they're just kind of all the same as the other people and heroes. Batman goes and fights gods, and he's, just a genius in a giant bat costume. They can kind of minimize the idea of God in a way. But we see this where I think Daredevil's perspective, there's a certain groundedness to him where he's often not in situations where he's fighting aliens or going to space or doing anything crazy. He's kind of a ground level hero with the ground level perspective of here's here's my area to work and to invest and to see good and change and growth. And ultimately, God knows this is his stage. Everything is his. And keeps things in perspective. Maybe even adds a little humble pie. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you liked this little talk. I love Daredevil. He's one of my favorite characters. Not because he has Christian faith, but just I think because of the gritty ground level, the groundedness that he always possesses, and the kind of cool skills that he has and abilities, the way his powers kind of adapt to all kinds of situations. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you liked the video. I hope I didn't offend you. If I did or I didn't, please feel free to comment. Love your feedback, what you think. If this has made you think about anything a little differently than you did before, please feel free to comment. Much love, nothing but love, people. And I hope to catch you on the next video. Please like, subscribe, and share. Maybe you can tag somebody else who you want to comment about with it. So until next time, peace.